Good morning. Am I in?
Yes, you're in. Hi,
I
Jeff.
need a voice or a text from Ashley so I can vote.
For this meeting, you won't need that. You can just say aye or
I
nay. Yep, aye or nay or abstain.
thank you.
County board, you'll need my number though, so I'll call you.
Just text it because I'll be out today.
Okay, sounds good.
All righty, we'll call this meeting of the Public Works Committee of Washington County to order. It is 7:30 a.m. Affidavit of posting. This agenda was posted in the office of the county clerk on the 22nd day of April 2021. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. All right, it looks like we are all here. Jeff Schleif is attending via Zoom. And we will rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just a side note for those of you watching from home, today is Work Zone Safety Day, so we are supporting that by wearing high visibility gear. All right, the consent agenda, any discussion on that? Motion to approve. First by John, second by Newman. All right, and then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this consent agenda approved. Moving into discussion items. Broadband white paper. Scott has a presentation for us on that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, the county executive asked myself to look into doing a broadband white paper for Washington County. I was just with Dave Barber in IT and Eric Damcott in our GIS unit to look at what the broadband current situation is in Washington County. So in your packet, you'll see two broadband papers. One is a single page white paper, think of it as a condensed down version. The other one's a multi-page PDF of a more detailed version of what the broadband services looks like in Washington County. So want to be able to have a nice one page that we can hand to representatives, state representatives or federal representatives, but also something a little more detailed for the county board to look at and to absorb that information versus just a kind of a one page quick document. So I put together a couple slides here today to go through that versus trying to read through either a long version or a short version. And certainly if the chair requests, certainly can answer questions along the way. Dave and Eric are here as well to answer questions if I cannot. So why were we doing this white paper? We want to look at what the current status of broadband was in Washington County. This came up actually pre-pandemic, but the pandemic just kind of shot this up through the roof, obviously, with people being either work from home, schooling from home, telehealth through home. Obviously, the need for that becomes more of a more of a need than a want as the society kind of moves down that road. So we wanted to see what, if anything, that we should do to actually provide this essential service, right? That economic growth and vitality, one of your goals as a county board, and make sure also providing access to basic needs. You would have asked me 20 years ago if internet was a basic need, probably not, but now it's just kind of slowly working its way towards that versus just kind of looking online and emails going towards, like I said before, about schooling, whether it's, grade school, high school, after, post-high school education, all those kind of sources. Then also look at determining any funding sources to assist with any broadband expansion in our county and if we determine that that's needed. So what is broadband? Most people know it's internet connections, right? So you think broadband, think internet connection. How the PSC and the federal government defines that as 25 megabytes per second upload speed, and then at least 3 download speed. So upload is coming to your computer and download is sort of pushing stuff back to the web site. So you can see there's a nice little graph there that we picked out. Obviously that service can be wired or wireless. We'll touch on that a little bit, but it kind of gives you an idea of what do you get for 25 megabytes per second. So if you look on that, if you have 25 megabytes per second, which is the bottom row right there, and you have 3 devices working, so maybe it's a mother, father, and a child, and if they're all streaming, it works, right? Because you're moderate, right? So if you look down below, moderate means it's a basic plus you can do streaming video, live video, and gaming with the moderate system. But if you want to do advanced, which is moderate plus multiple high demand applications, and simultaneously large downloads. You want to get to that, obviously that 25 megabytes per second. So you can see if you're kind of in a wireless service, you're getting 0.2 to 0.4, you're getting basic service, which means you're only going to be minimal browsing on the web, low quality, poor pre-recorded video or audio. So you kind of, as you can imagine, the faster your internet speed, the more devices you can have, right? And the more devices you can have, and the better they'll work, right? So you kind of think about in that logic. So that's why we included that little cheat sheet, if you will, within that white paper. So how are we doing in the county? So there's wired service and wireless service that the PSC looks at. So we pull these maps right from them. One bit of caution about these maps are done by census blocks, and which isn't great because they're large blocks. But if one person in that block says they have high-speed internet, the entire census block now has high-speed internet. So when you look at these maps, please take these with a huge grain of salt. But you look on the left-hand side, you can see kind of the northern tier of the county, if you will, the town of Wayne, Kewaskum, north half of Farmington, then down in the southwest part of the town of Erin, you can see the wired service just isn't there and available to most of those residents. Even though that you go to the census block, even if one person is, the census block is in, you can see those are relatively low. And if you look at that, you can see a lot of the counties got the better than 100 megabytes, the 25 to 99 is that lighter blue. And when you get down into that gray, that's up in the town of Wayne, up the upper left-hand corner, no wireline services available up there. Now, we'll get into it later on that it's coming up there slowly but surely, but that's the way it's looking. The other option you see to your right side is wireless. And that wireless can be not satellite yet as defined in wireless, but if you have a service like Highercom, Ethoplex, Bertram Wireless, if you have a hotspot through AT&T, US Cellular, that kind of stuff. And that's the map that kind of gets our county where we're at, is that everybody has wireless service available between 25 and 99, according to the PSC. We did a little survey of staff as well as county board supervisors. And a lot of those people that maybe it's out there and available, they're not getting that 25 megabytes per second. It's certainly not reliable as you'd hope out there in the rural areas. So the map on the right is the one that PSC looks at going, when they start doing grant determinations, going, the county's got 25 megabytes per second. We got other areas in the whole state that are underserved or unserved, kind of like the town of Wayne is for wired. And so where are they going to spend their money first in those areas? Because we, according to the maps, have that service. Even though it might not be perfect and reliable, according to the PSC, we have that service available. So how is broadband expanding in Washington County? You'll see in there, you saw that we took out a couple permits, or at least a couple firms did, up in the town of Wayne to put wireline service up in the town of Wayne. Unfortunately, the town of Wayne doesn't permit the utilities like Washington County does. So we know where they got the permits through the state of Wisconsin and Washington County, but after that, we're not really sure where the lines go. As you can imagine, these companies are pretty proprietary, you know what I mean? They don't want to give us their information, right? And so by doing that, is that it's really hard to say what they've got and where they have that service. Also, that same map on the left is also the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That's to provide a wired service and wireless service to those areas. And you can see that map, except for the town of Erin, kind of mirrors the previous map, right, of the underserved areas. The bad part of that federal fund is they have a completion date of 2027 and haven't started yet. So you can imagine that waiting another 6 years for that service to come. Could be 6 years, could be less, obviously, if they get done sooner. But we have a list there of a bunch of different programs. They did the Connect to America Fund phase, but that was only up to 10 megabytes per second, right? So think like DSL, AT&T type of line versus a fiber line, a copper line for that last mile or so. CARES Act funds, that was just last year. We did not receive any of those funds. Again, because that map on the right that we showed you last time, they think we have a good wireless service in Washington County. Same thing with Wisconsin broadband grants. They too recognize that if you have 25 megabytes per second, if you're not underserved or unserved, you're probably not going to creep up to the top of demand. You can imagine other counties that are truly unserved get ahead of us on that list than where we are right now. National Telecommunication Information Administration Grant Program, again, because we have service, we're not going to be eligible for those programs. Plus, the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund on the left says, we're not going to spend more federal money on you because you got federal money coming to you already, right? Even though it's not, it might take another 6 years, and their other program might be done in 2 years. Because, and same thing with the CRISA funding as well, is they want to get that funding out and used to people so they can actually get service, but they're going to look at that map on the left going, Washington County's taken care of. It's coming. Just be patient. So we got those programs that are out there that we investigated. Not to go short, but here's the conclusions right away, and certainly can ask questions. But some things that we could do, we could create a pilot program using either mostly our funds. We're still waiting on that CRISA funds. That's the latest round. May 11th is when the true broadband is included in there, broadband, sewer, water, and obviously stuff for PPE and stuff. But we're just not sure what restrictions are going to be on that yet. And so we won't know until right before the board on May 12th. We'll be doing this presentation on May 12th. I'm not sure I'm going to have the final answers for you because I'm just getting the information the day before. We will certainly try as a staff, but I'm not sure we'll be there. But that's one thing we could do is obviously utilize potentially those funds or county funds, right, to provide that installation cost for satellite. And one thing I didn't tab on too much here is that the satellite service that's coming, if you've heard of the Amazon service up there, Starlink, that's out there putting satellites up all the time. We've heard good initial results. There's a couple of sheriff's deputies. The sheriff himself is waiting to provide that service. And that maybe is the answer, right? And also installation cost of, I think, $499 or something right around there. So maybe that's one thing we look at. Also, hopefully that'll help with the cost out there, right? Of competition, hopefully breeds lower cost. So that's one option that we can certainly look at, is to provide installation costs for some of those systems. We could support a change in definition of download and upload speeds. That 25 megabytes per second I listed earlier has been around for many years. PSC is kicking around the idea, maybe the federal government too, and that would be something that would get us back into that funding cycle if we get up that internet speed, knowing that internet's here to stay, and the more service you can get, more people are on there. If you imagine out in the rural area too, if you got a DSL line, you know, you can only put so much stuff through the line, right? Just like a fire hose, right? Only so much water will fit before you kind of run out of data line. We could create a web application which allowed residents to search for available internet providers. This one came from Eric Damcott. I appreciate his thoughts on this. He did the survey for us for the county workers, and it just seemed like we had all these maps of all these services and where they're all provided and stuff like that. And you know, one of the question he had in there was like, what services are all available to you? And a lot of people just didn't know, right? What are their options potentially? The challenge of that too is that, like I said, those census blocks, right? So it says Spectrum's in your census block, but it might not be near your house, right? It might be a half mile down the road or a quarter mile down the road. And so even that it says that Charter or Spectrum is available to you, it really might not be available to you. So that's part of the challenge too with anything we do with that, but certainly something that we could do relatively quickly. But like I said, there would be some gaps in there. We might say you have Spectrum available, but you really don't. So that's part of the challenge with creating a system like that. Outside of state or federal funding, you know, Washington County could partner with broadband providers to install wired or wireless networks. There's other counties out there in the state of Wisconsin who've done that, who partner with local companies to provide that internet service. Sometimes they're for like business parks and stuff like that, but certainly something we could expand upon. Again, we're waiting for that CRISA funds to see what's all available with that. Or it may just be that the Ethoplex, this Rural Digital Opportunity Fund I talked about, Starlink, Amazon's Project Kuiper, which is our satellite system, or 5G, and 5G is not here yet in the county, even no matter what you see on the T-Mobile maps and Verizon maps, it's truly not here yet, but someday potentially would be. You know, and maybe the answer is, yeah, we just wait and see. Not a great answer, right? For a county wants to be proactive and attract people and businesses, but just throwing it out there as when you say all options, we want to make sure you've got all the options in there. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have for the short presentation on the broadband here in Washington County.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Scott? All right, we will move on. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. We will move on to the 2022 to 2027 Capital Improvement Plan Department requests, highway and facilities.
Morning, everyone. My name is Aaron Dahl. I'm just here. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the CIP process and where we're at today, and then I'll turn it over to the departments who can talk about their projects specifically and answer any questions you might have about that. So a little overview of the CIP. As you know, we've got a substantial investment in roads and infrastructure, buildings, parks, all that stuff. The CIP is how we plan for the management, repair, maintenance, stuff like that for all of that stuff. CIP is largely funded with sales tax. We've got some non-levy sources in there, some grants, things like that. Sometimes we fund things with fund balance that's been accumulated in the enterprise funds. So like parks, for example, is one. Sales tax in this county is split. It's about a 60-40 split on an annual basis. 60% is used to fund the CIP, and then 40% goes towards property tax relief in the budget. We estimate anywhere between $12 and $13 million a year in sales tax, and then that split gets applied there. Process-wise on the CIP, so far this year, departments have been generating and updating their project requests. Standing committees are hearing about the projects for their assigned committees in April. That's a discussion item at this point, so we're looking for input and other things for consideration by the budget team to incorporate into the full CIP that will be seen later this year. So after the committees see it, then we take it internally. The budget team does a full review of all the requests. We work with the exec's office. We package all of those requests. We prioritize them and package them into the full CIP based on, it's kind of a balancing act between our available resources and funding the county and the community's priorities at that time. Once that's complete, the full CIP will go to the executive committee in July and then the full board in August. So for those of you that remember what the process used to look like, we've pushed that timing back significantly. So last year, standing committees were hearing these requests, I think as early as January, and the full board was approving potentially even in April. So we're moving that process back, mostly because it gives us a better chance to build good estimates for sales tax and for the costs of materials and labor and all those things. So historically, again, the CIP gets approved in April, and then you approve the funding for the CIP and the budget in November. So again, a lot changes in that time frame, right? Last year we had a pandemic hit. We had no idea what sales tax was going to do. We had, cost of lumber is a good example of the way things can change like that. So again, pushing that timeline back gives us a better opportunity to get good estimates, good projects in there. This year in particular, we're also looking at some of that federal money to see, if there's any potential use for that as well. We don't have any guidance yet on how that can be spent. We're hoping for that sometime mid-May, but that's still kind of an open question as well. So this new timeline will help us accommodate that too. So again, that's just kind of an overview. Now I'll step back, let Scott start with the highway projects, and then I see Kara's here too for the facilities projects. So thanks.
Thank you. So you'll see in front of you, you had a nice lengthy thing of all of our highway projects that we're proposing to do between 2022 and 2027 out there, very consistent with our 2050 plan. We utilize our 2050 plan as kind of the baseline. And then what we do from that is look at current road conditions, right? If you remember the 2050 plan, which we did back in 2017 already, it's a best guess what projects we're going to be doing that given year. but we need to make sure that we're just not doing them because it was in a plan from, 3-4 years ago. That we're relooking at those roadways again to see which ones should get moved up, which ones should get moved back, and how the finances are working on those. So you might see some that maybe slid up a year, slid back 2 years, stuff like that. But generally speaking, more or less in line with the 2050 plan. The one word that's in here is our County Highway Y that you just the speed limit on down in Germantown between 175 and Highway Q is not in the packet right now. It was redone in 2010. So obviously we only had about 11 years on that roadbed. We're expecting 25 to 30 years, but that one is progressively getting worse. They did what it was called a super pave at that time. They tried to keep oil down to a minimum and really refine the asphalt. And by doing that, it's not as flexible. And so we're finding out that roadway, instead of that normal curve of, yeah, you do this at this time, you do this at this time, it's just kind of going down fast. So that might be one, just a caution that you might see move up, whether it's in this 22 or 23 or 24, 25, but definitely still not going to be out there in the year 2035 is where, if you've driven that roadway anytime lately, you'll look at that going, there's no way that road's going to last another 15 years the way it's kind of going down. So just a word of caution out there when you look at this, that we're aware of County Highway Y is out there and kind of know that we're going to do something probably a little bit sooner than what we want to out there. So we'll be working with some paving firms to look what their options are out there besides just your normal mill and overlay, but that might be coming sooner rather than later. Again, we're looking at potentially, supplementing this with, if we have all of a sudden the state approves MLS this year. Remember, they gave us $1 million last year for road projects. They do that. That might be a good fit for that project coming up. Going forward, right, to not change the amount that we need in CIP, but adding a separate project into there using those state funds, because again, this balances out and matches up our current plan with sales tax. So again, we're just looking at between sales tax revenues, as Aaron mentioned, as well as fund balance and any other funding opportunities. We got the LRIP program that you'll see in there from the state. Again, it's at $490 every other year. We're applying for STP, Surface Transportation Program money. We got that on County Highway P. We're hoping in the year 2028, which is just outside of this, we'll get that for County Highway Q down by Lake 5 along the border with Waukesha County. So we're always looking at additional funding opportunities, and I get 4 of them from Aaron with the federal government as well. So we're always looking at different opportunities that are out there and applying for those when we can, whether it's a federal earmark program or anything else. So if you want, I can certainly go project by project if you want on that, or if you have any specific questions on any projects.
Couple of them. First of all, 2025, you're looking at using 10 million of the sales tax. That's a really ambitious schedule. You've got, what, 3 major rebuilds going on?
Mm-hmm.
Why so much in 1 year?
So 2025 has the project of County Highway M project. Is basically that's 5 million plus, and the rest of it is paving. So again, that's using some of that fund balance that Aaron was talking about. We're getting $3 million a year in sales tax revenue, storing some of that up so we can utilize that year.
Okay.
Something similar to what we're doing like on County Highway W this year, that our sales tax is only $3 million. But again, because we have money from last year we didn't use for sales tax, we were able to use that money on this one. So
part of that
right.
10 was banked.
Yes.
Okay. But with that, I mean, H, D, N, N, M, are you going to be spreading yourself a little thin that year? Because we use our county engineer on those projects.
Yeah,
to help save money.
I've been called thin in years, but I appreciate that. So what we do is, so those projects are also, so the county engineer, Brad, he'll be on the major construction project. And what we have is we've actually developed 3 or 4 of our laborers to actually do the inspection on our paving projects. So Brad doesn't need to be out there when they're pulverizing. That's when they're breaking up the asphalt to make sure they're going down depth. We've trained other laborers to actually do that.
Okay.
It's a little change of pace for them. We're not doing any paving projects this year, so they're a little bit down that to not be able to do that. But by doing that, it makes them more knowledgeable, right? And gets that little bit of advancement for them. But they're out there, they know how to watch the density testing. They know how to make sure the loads, the thicknesses, all that kind of stuff. So Brad gets them going, he gives them a little refresher every year and then kind of lets them go. So
Okay.
by doing that, it gives our force a little something to look forward to.
Okay, good.
But by doing that and combining them, we're hoping for a better cost too, right? The more product you do, the price per ton, usually shrinks down. That's
You're
why we
gonna
didn't do
work
like a little project this year. We try to make sure you bank a couple together.
Right. You're going to work on the timing though, so you don't have too many roads blocked off at the same
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely, yep. And we work with the DOT as well to make sure that their roadways and our roadways all match up. And, you know, if they're on the ball, they can get a project done in about 3 weeks, you know, from start to finish, a paving project. Once they pulverize it and they pave it, and then we come back and do the painting and the striping and the shouldering. So it's about a 3-week process. So we can certainly spread those out, right? If you see, there's a lot of them in the county that year that you can kind of jump from spot to spot and not utilize the roads. But we work close with the DOT to make sure we coordinate all that kind of stuff for the most part until they change stuff on us.
Yeah, yeah, I can't count on the state. I also notice you have the W extension in here.
Yes, in full disclosure, absolutely, because you'll be voting on that, obviously, as you know, later today, and county board later. And this doesn't actually get voted on until,
After,
what do you say, June. And so obviously, if it dies and dies, then it goes away.
okay,
So,
thank you.
Well, Scott, I got a couple questions. In 2022, where you had the 3.7 million in fund balance. Now that fund balance, is that funded by tax revenue or
that's
sales tax? Sales
Yep.
tax revenue? Okay. And then to follow up with Marcy's question, in 2025 with the $10 million, where you have $10 million in sales tax funding, are we to assume, based on your answer before, that most of that's coming from fund balance then? Because you only have 3 million a year from
Right.
sales tax?
So what,
Can I jump
yeah,
in?
if you want, I can explain it, but Aaron probably does better.
So what this is showing here, there's a little bit of a cleanup process that has to happen. So ideally, we would like to show in the sales tax line, we would show current year sales tax, and then CRAB fund balance would include all of that banked sales tax. So there's a little bit of a cleanup process that has to happen, but between those two lines, essentially, that's either current year sales tax or banked sales tax for the most part. So.
Thank you.
If you look at the, even 2022 using, 2 million of the 3-some million, 2023 using $1 million. You also recall that the county board approved the debt proceeds of the $10 million. So obviously the last couple of years, we've been using the debt proceeds and not using the sales tax the last couple of years. So it doesn't show up on the forms, right? But the last 2 years, not using the sales tax kind of helps us out quite a bit, or 3 years, I believe. So.
It was just a little misleading to
Yeah.
me because
The way it looks, yes.
2022,
Yeah.
then that 3.7 could be down in the sales tax as well.
Yeah, if you remember that when I did the 2050 plan update, was it February or March, they're kind of running together. We're only asking for the $3 million plus whatever it is, a little bit of the 3% every year. So we're not requesting $11 million that year. Just want to make sure you clear that. We're only requesting the same, whatever you saw in that 2050 plan for the request, that's what it is. And finance and budget team knows that. Yeah, we're not requesting $11 million one year and taking all the sales tax, right, for that given year for projects. They did help us, and Marty over there too helped us looking at that with a nice fine tooth comb to make sure all the numbers worked out well for us.
When we approved the 2022 capital, I should rephrase that. When we approved the capital expenditures, it's just for 2022, I'm assuming, because this is a living document.
You're doing a 2-year budget this time, so I believe you'll be approving 22 and 23 this year.
Okay.
And obviously anything past that 24, 25 and beyond will come back to the board and committee and whatnot. But yes, at that time, you'll be just approving the 22 and 23.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this section for Scott? Okay.
Right, facilities. So you'll see facilities is here. So facilities is unique in the fact that we also took this facilities, and Kara can certainly speak to the products in more specific detail, but those standing committees as well. So you'll see like jail projects, for instance, are listed in here, or sheriff's project. Well, Kara took those and I took those to the public safety committee. You'll see fair park stuff on here, right, going to their committee. So you see stuff for facilities that looks like why is it coming to, Public Works? It's not a highway project. But that's why we took it to those standing committees for their individual ones that they're doing, like UWMWC and stuff like that, but also all of them packaged together for Public Works because you do oversee facilities. So these are being looked at by, most of them being looked at by two separate committees. So if you have any questions on those, we certainly could discuss those. And again, we'll be evaluating the CRISA funds too, if there's any possibility to move up projects a little bit. I'll pick on the GL roof project, which was talked about at Public Works. We spend quite a bit of money on roof repair and leaks right now. That it might be one of those projects that if we do get some funding, we might move that project up. Again, what that does, then it uses the other funding and frees up funding for other projects later on down the road. But there are some projects like that any lighting and stuff like that, we can get a return of investment on a little bit quicker. It makes more sense to move up in the plan versus keeping it where it is. So you might see with those funds, again, we're not sure how they can be utilized and what they want to be utilized on and what you're going to select them to be utilized on. But to see, it might make sense to move up some of these that are out there a little bit further. But we just don't know that for right now.
Any questions?
Good reports.
Okay. Is there anything else you have for us on this, Scott?
I do not. I appreciate that. You will see this again, obviously, as Aaron pointed out. So if you have any questions between then and now, certainly feel free to reach out to myself or Karen. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
All right. Moving on to action items, resolution amend 2021 to 2026 capital improvement plan, county highway projects, County Highway W and County Highway S. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, we brought this forward to you as a discussion item. You'll see several agenda items all related to this project on your agenda packet. So you'll see, first of all, the CIP amendment. If you're looking at wanting to do these two projects, again, they're pinned together, and I can explain again why they're actually pinned together between W and County Highway S. Then if you approve that, then obviously you can approve the relocation orders for S and W if you so choose. Then obviously if you disapprove the first one, then you don't need to worry about the relocation orders. And then number D is the renaming of the roadway from 83 to County Highway W. Again, if you approve the CIP amendment, we'd like to change that roadway name to W, and that short name is Highway WS. So those are kind of all interrelated. Obviously, we want to take them one at a time, and I won't jump ahead to the other ones. So I would just want to make sure you're aware that they all are interconnected. So I did reach out, and it didn't seem like there was a need for me to redo the PowerPoint that I did last month for any explanation. It can certainly open up to questions. A couple of comments that as you know, if you see up on the board in a second, maybe, I've heard this quite a few times, and I know I've explained it, why the projects are linked together. Why don't we do just S and 175 and be done with it? I've heard that several times, read it recently as well. And the reason why is that we're looking at both safety and efficiency. Remember, there's two components to this, and sometimes that efficiency thing gets overlooked a little bit. And I'll pick on the intersection of S and 175, looking there in the upper right corner, that if that's all you do and you leave 83 alone, you still got the conflict point at Highway S. Again, we looked at the traffic safety numbers last month. We can certainly revisit those. And obviously the issue you have at 175 and 83. So if you just do the 175 and S intersection and wait for some reason, you still don't impact the safety of those other two intersections. You also don't impact the efficiency of movements by doing that, because you're basically staying right where you are, status quo. You got a little bit safer intersection at 175, but you don't improve the efficiency of that movement between Allenton and Hartford. And that's why they're all really interrelated. And if you do all that work up there by vacating that start by 83 north of S to improve that area, to improve safety at all the intersections, and don't do the W extension, well, now you just decrease the efficiencies up at 83. People are going from 83 to 175. Now they're less efficient, and now they're making more traffic movements towards 175. So you actually decrease the efficiency by doing all that work up there, by just making that alone and not doing the extension. That's why this project is unique, that they're all tied together, but it's not unique to Washington County. The work we did on Pioneer Road last year, right? Just by repaving that, we got rid of the intersection by Mayfield. It made it more efficient. more safe, right, by improving that roadway. County Highway D up in the town of Wayne, we realigned it for safety purposes, but also if you drive it, it's more efficient. Are you saving 10 minutes? Absolutely not, right? But it is more efficient than getting from point A to point B. So there is always the efficiency components of these as well. And that's what we're looking at here. And obviously last month, I explained all the other areas in the state, or county, excuse me, that we did those efficiencies and how they've worked out. And there's many, many more examples of that, even 41 and 45, if you want to go back to those projects. So there's a lot of reasons for efficiencies out here. And that's why we link these all together, kind of going forward. And we can certainly talk about more details and stuff when we get into the plats about what kind of changes we've made recently. But that's why we really believe at the Highway Department that, linking these projects together is so important, not only just for safety, but for the efficiency of all the movements that are out there.
All right, I'll open the floor to questions or comments. John?
Again, I've talked to my constituents and showed them this, and the ones that I've shown, they're for it. They like the way it lays out, the flow. But obviously we have issues with the residents whose land this affects. Could you walk us through again where this started and the changes? Because I thought that you had it at the tree line and then you moved it to the north.
Yeah.
And I know you just recently made some more changes to
Sure.
minimize the acreage.
If you want to go back to 2018, we actually had 3 options that were out there. The first option showed more of a alignment. If you're familiar with the area, County Highway K is about a half mile to the south of that tree line, and it's not going to show up on the map unless I zoom out a little bit more. We had one option that more or less kind of traversed right from W to get down to County Highway K in the lower left-hand corner, more or less a straight shot. Obviously, that impacted quite a bit of land. We looked at that. We also looked at an option, instead of having that curve that's coming up being 45 miles an hour, we actually had a 55 mile an hour curve, right? Which means it's flatter, impacting more land. So we looked at that as option 2. So we had 3 options. Those went to, the committee went to that. We provided the funding opportunities for each of those as well, sources. And it was decided that the 45 mile an hour being the least impactful was kind of the way to go. At that time, when we did that, we actually just put it right down the middle of the tree line, because what we want to do is, before we got final design, is to make sure that we show that we're potentially impacting properties, right? So you got to, if you're going to show that one north or south of the line, then you decide to flip. And if you do that to a public meeting, right, people go, you showed it north, now you're going south. So we decided to show it right in the tree line to show all 4 property owners that were there that they could potentially be impacted by this project.
Mm-hmm.
So we also had different options at the intersections up by S175 too. If you recall, we had some cul-de-sac options and whatnot back at that point too, and decided that this option is the best for effective and efficient mobility. Circle back to now this year, we looked at more finalizing this design and said, well, how can we minimize even more the impact to those properties? And by doing that, we looked at, instead of going down the middle of the tree line, let's go to the north of the tree line. Right, let's skirt that north side. Sometimes the ag use is not as great on the north side because you don't get as much sun. That was my logic anyway, to go up there. Then you can see that far right corner, southwest, where you got the word extension up there, that by doing that, you now don't impact that farm field. So it's one less farm field that we're impacting. You're certainly going to impact the Wendiger property where you're coming off of Highway W, which either alignment you're going with. But going south, then you could have avoided impact to the Geller property, which is the upper left-hand corner, right? So it could have went either way. We looked at, let's go north, already impacting, that's an Elaine Gearing property, that Gearing, the other Gearing. Let's go to north and see how that one works out for the alignment, because we've got to come back into the intersection S where the curves back into old 83 where it curves back in, right? So the closer we can get to that, the less impacts we have up there as far as that turning movement comes inside. So kind of all kind of came together with that. We certainly talked about the plat too. Just last couple of days, we, instead of having a 3-to-1 slope, we tightened it up to 2-to-1 and saved about 1/10 of an acre of land that we don't have to acquire. So we've been doing that with every project we do. It's not just this project, but the Highway K project, the D project, the Pioneer Road project, right? We want to try to lessen the impact as much as possible. A, it helps us with the community, but B, it saves us some money as well. The less land we have to purchase, the better off we are as that too. So it's kind of a win-win, if you will, as far as that, by any decrease we can do. So we had an engineering firm look at the profile, right? Go up and down with the profile, say how can we not impact the land as much, right? So we had all that kind of stuff kind of tied together, Supervisor, to make sure we looked at all those options. And with that being said, I mentioned in my report last time, this time too, we're going to do an agriculture impact statement with that cap, right? Where all that stuff's going to come out and all the public communications we've done and how we've done to actually look at different options and how we came about with this one, as well as the intersection safety up at S and 83 and 175. So that stuff all come out in that report that you'll see hopefully later this year. We can get them moving on it once we get them information. So yeah, there's a lot of history out there.
Right. Well, I understand. Yeah. And the curve that you're talking about on, which is now 83, which would be W, is there anything else we can do? I know you said there's minimums because of speed.
Right, we're at
Right.
minimums, and we've got the elevation, the road is super elevated too. If
Mhm.
you imagine like Singer Speedway, right, the corners are banked. So we already got that banked, not quite up to the maximum. We don't want to hit the maximum, but want to make sure we're just below the maximum. Maximum's like 6%. We're like 5.5 or something like that. Just because you're worried about when they construct it, are they going to construct it that well, right? So you want to just so unfortunately, there's not a lot else we can do up there. Besides what you saw in not just this map, but obviously if you on our website as well. And I've got it here, the engineering's rendition. If you're at the public information meeting, that's been on our website as well since that meeting, to kind of show what else is out there. So yeah, I wish we could do less. I do. I know the people in the area. I have a lot of respect for the people in the area, whether they believe that or not, that I wish it would be somewhere else and make this easier for everybody. But unfortunately, the issue is right here in this area.
And as far as county-wide, is this the only added road you're looking at doing in 50 years, right? I mean, I think everything else is repaving and just
Reconstructing, right? Minor realignments, like we did on Highway K, for instance.
intersection
It did move
realignments
a
and
lot.
stuff.
Highway D was probably the biggest one that we had as far as off alignment is concerned. I'll pick on, we're doing County Highway M. Not a lot of off alignment stuff there. It's pretty north-south right now. When we get north of NN eventually, there's a curve or two there I'd like to flatten out, especially just north of NN. About a half mile, there's a curve that people keep running up. I'd like to flatten that one out someday, but that'll be a minor, I would call it relatively minor change. So, but yeah, this is pretty much it. We've done a lot. We've done XX in not too recent past, up in Farmington to increase safety at that intersection. So we hit these things periodically, and we do those again when we do those paving projects. We look at stuff like Highway U and Turtle Road, right? We took Highway U down about 2 feet, right, to get and lifted Turtle Road up about a foot to make the sight distance better there. So we're always looking at minor safety improvements on any project we do. We got Highway E right by is it not Roy Lane Parkway, up on the top of the hill by Lapines Hill. We're looking at improving those intersections, but that's just taking the hill down again a couple of feet and raising a little bit. Those modifications, we're always looking for that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Don?
I think actually on the committee report, we should also have safe and secure community, because this, in my experience in 30 years in law enforcement and doing traffic design for safety, these, as it stands, I'm surprised we don't have any crosses up with flowers at some of these intersections. They're that dangerous. So I think not only is it for efficient flow of traffic, it's for safe flow of traffic. I think we all can agree that one person's life is precious, and we should do what we can to make it as safe as possible for people to go from point A to point B. Thank you.
So Scott, I'm gonna kind of reference the map for the extension portion. It doesn't show where the right of way will be on the map. I don't know if I saw that. Is that in our packet? Because I don't remember.
Yeah, the
next
plat
one.
and the relocation order is in there. the original, which is slowly coming up on the screen. I can certainly zoom into those areas. So this was when the engineering firm did this is the display that was taken at the public information meeting. Supervisor Newman. They've since made some modifications to this, but it gives you kind of an idea. Is there an area you'd like me to focus in on?
Well, I just had a
Go on.
question with, I don't know if the same property owner owns all of that property, but those,
Down to the south?
yeah, to the south. I'll wait till you bring it up. So where it meets 175, is that creating a little triangle lot there, or is that going to be?
Yeah, and we talked about that with briefly with the town of Addison too. That's about a 2.5 acre parcel south of the roadway. I don't know if this will, my arrow, yeah, it shows up. So right in this area here you're talking,
Yes.
right?
And-
Yeah, it's about a 2.5 acre parcel remnant. So as part of this agricultural impact statement, right, we'll be talking to the Wenigers about, well, do they want to keep that and potentially have it as a single home site? That's what we kind of talked with the town of Addison. They want to keep it. Is it even farmable? Is it advantageous to attach that to the parcel to the south? Same thing with the parcel at the west side of the project too, very similar. I've reached out one time, but we'll talk about that more with the agricultural impact statement with DACAP as far as what to do with those remnant parcels. Whether, again, if they're farmable, they can certainly keep them and farm them. If they don't deem them farmable, that might be something that the county either has to buy or purchase from the landowners. So we're just not at that point yet. With that as well on the west side, we'll be talking to the town of Addison as well as landowner to see if that roadway can be vacated or turned over to a town road. If it's vacated and becomes a private driveway, they don't need that expansive curve right there, right? If you're doing a driveway standard versus a roadway standard, there's two different things, right? As you can imagine, coming up to your driveway to a road, you don't need that designed to, full county road standard. So that'd be something that we look at too, because we're looking at construction in 2023. So again, we have time to discuss those issues and get those kind of worked out. Just like we do on any other project that we do, we get to this point and then we know there's a project going. It doesn't pay to start down this road if we're not going to approve the project. That's why it's important to approve the project so we can say, yep, we're going, the county's committed. Now we can go ahead and discuss these versus saying, I don't know if they want to do it or not. So that's why I want to look at getting the approval to move forward and to start having those discussions and negotiations with those people that are out there in that area versus spending a lot of my time and then it comes back and dies again. So trying to be efficient with our time too.
So I'll refer to the two triangle lots.
Yep.
That would be created. Are those owned by the adjacent property, the lot next to it, the same property owners?
No, they're owned. So the one that's on the over here, Doug, on the west side is owned by this is currently owned by this property. So this is all one. So the tree line is the ownership line all the way across. So there's one owner up to the north of the tree line, one owner to the south. Same thing on the other tree line to the east. One owner to the north of the tree line and another owner to the south of the tree line. So there's 4 owners there. Does that make sense? Kind of like a plus.
Yeah, that
Yes.
answers my question. I just had concerns with those lots being, I don't know what the restrictions are in the town
Mhm.
for lot size and
Right.
what they
That's
can do with it.
all we got to kind of hash out with the town to see what's all available. And if we're creating it, does that make a difference, right? The town used to have like a 35 acre minimum in the town of
Yeah.
Addison. I think they still do. But that's all the stuff we can discuss with them and discuss with the landowners, discuss with DATCAP, Department of Ag, Trade, Consumer Protection as we go forward, what those are going to look like. Right now, we're showing them as staying as their ownership.
Okay, thank you.
What would happen if the curve for what's going to be WS, what if you move that road up north of the tree line? In other words, you start curving right at his driveway, come across the north of the tree line and attach further over. Would that then square that area up a little bit more so it's farmable?
Well, if I know you haven't seen this on your the packet yet. We haven't gotten there, but we're looking at that little triangle, the east side of it, excuse me, looking at potential for stormwater over there.
Mhm.
They actually started, the original plan had them starting at the driveway, the northern driveway. But there's also a house driveway that's there as well. It's hard to see unless I can maybe zoom in. They're probably having problems getting that second driveway, the southern driveway, to work out grade wise. Because there's such a height difference there, Supervisor. So, but starting it back here was just a challenge. They came up and around this way, but now you're impacting that northern field more too.
Gotcha.
So they did look at bringing that one of their plans had the driveway starting all the way, back here and over this way.
Mhm.
Kinda. So that was one of the options that they looked at.
Okay.
I think they even started south of that driveway. North of the driveway, excuse me, north of the driveway.
Okay. Okay. I agree with Chairman Crayfall about the Highway S. I was very disappointed that last time that this came up, that S did not continue through. I believe the intersection improvements up there are extremely important for safety, as what has been talked about by everybody here and in the past. There's a lot of accidents. The accident reports in the packet show that on all the connections of those intersections. What's being proposed here would help alleviate a lot of that. There's always going to be people that will have accidents no matter what you do. You can have a perfect intersection, and you're still going to have accidents because of people can be stupid. But the improvements up here are very important for the safety of the community in this area. A great deal of traffic does go through here, and it would make that a much safer way to pass through. I still disagree with the County Highway W extension part of this. You can talk to your blue in the face on this one, and I will not agree with it. I think it's a poor use of our funds with all the other roads that need to be done. I know you have this pocket of money that you're going to pull from, but that pocket of money could be used for other roads that need to be taken care of. County Highway G just keeps getting pushed further back and further back, as an example. As you're cutting through here, it's not just that you're taking about 11 acres, you're also, as was pointed out by Doug, you're also eliminating the use, really, any proper use of those corners. And can it be farmed? Yeah. Efficiently? No. I mean, you're going to be, corners make headlands. Headlands do not produce. Any farmer will tell you that. There may be 2.5 acres left on that east portion, but by the time you overlap, it's a waste of money to try and plant that unless you do hay continuously, and that's not practical either. And the little 3/4 of an acre down on the other end, not practical at all to continue using that. So that's additional lost acres because of this project. I believe that getting S done, we do the intersection analysis every year and see how much that improves that area. That will show whether the extension on W is absolutely necessary. We have 2 very nice county highways within a mile of each other there. Putting a third one makes no sense. And going back to, I could see resistance from the farmer on the north section of 83 to abandon that. I would not want to have to maintain that as a driveway. And he needs to access his north fields. You don't want him going out on W with his farm equipment if you put that extension in there and then having to go back around. That's not efficient either.
No, by vacating, the roadway would still stay there. We wouldn't take the roadway out. The roadway would still stay there. He would have just basically that whole stretch from S down to
And then
80.
it's his to maintain, and that's
Mhm.
not necessarily practical either. So, but that would be that person's decision if it came to that.
Right.
So I agree with doing S. And like I said, I'm disappointed it didn't go through last time. But I still do not want to see the W extension go through. And I will not be voting for that. And I don't know if we need an amendment at this point to try and pull that out of there. Or if that would come with the next set.
I'm not a parliamentarian. I think you could do that now or at board.
We don't even have a motion yet.
Mhm. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
um, we've talked about this for years, and I firmly believe that the two projects should stay together, as Scott stated in the first place. If we tried to do S separately, we're just doing this project in dribs and drabs, and there's no efficiency in that. And sooner or later, we're going to kill somebody on those intersections. So I would be strongly against amending this to separate the two projects. Thank you.
Can you put the map back up? Oh, sorry. One of the things by not doing these projects in conjunction, all the traffic will be funneled up to S. Now, the sight lines on S are not the best, even with the improvements. But then all that traffic will go on. The sight lines on the W extension are much better. It's a much longer stretch. It's a straight line. You have actually 175 is kind of coming off a curve, so that reduces sight lines there too. So by not doing both, it's really not, you're almost creating a more of a problem at S by not doing this, by not doing the W project in conjunction with the S. So I understand where Marcy's going with it. But I think you really create more of a problem at S if you don't have that W. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I agree that the intersection at Highway S needs to be redone. I used to drive that every day when I worked for my uncle in Hartford, and it's absolutely terrible. You have semi trucks and dump trucks on 175 just blaring almost at 80 miles an hour and it's a last second thing, even if you are the most attentive, paying attention driver. I've seen accidents happen out there. 83, that section there off of 175 is just an on-ramp, basically. People are not even slowing down. Their blinkers don't shut off when they're turning right onto that roadway. And I agree, even if we do make these improvements, it's just, there's going to be a ton more traffic going through there like there is now. I mean, I've driven it at night, I've driven it in the morning during, rush hours, however you want to call it. And it's still a lot of traffic. And it's not efficient because this little sections of roadway where people are between 175 and 83, that's not very far, and people are still trying to get up to 60 miles an hour because it's a county highway. It's not safe and it's not efficient is what my view is on it. And I wish there were better alternatives, but I will take a motion to approve.
I would make that motion or second it.
I'll take the first from Jeff and the second from Doug. And this will be forwarding it to the county board tonight, at tonight's meeting, where, or next month, I apologize. Excellent, that's much better. Yeah, so this will be forwarding it to the county board, and I look forward to hearing the discussion there myself. Go ahead, Marcy.
I would like to move to amend. My amendment would be to remove the County W extension from the resolution.
Is there a second? Amendment on the floor. We have a first. Is there a second? There's no second, so the amendment dies. All right. So voting on forwarding the resolution amend 2021 to 2026 capital improvement plan, county highway projects, county highway W and county highway S to the county board for next month. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries with one nay. Moving on to B, resolution county trunk highway W relocation order. Scott, do you have anything?
Yes. Just a few comments that some plan changes were made. Like I said, some reductions were made on the County Highway W extension to lessen the impact on the right of way. So we actually updated the plat in your packet yesterday morning. So thank you for the clerk's office for accommodating that and getting that completed for us. We changed that back so from, again, in the area that you see, it's up on the screen in a second. Down on the right-hand side of this and the left-hand side, right side, that major curve that you kind of see going up there, we talked about earlier, we, instead of that slope being at 3-to-1, we increased it to a 2.5-to-1 to lessen the impacts onto that farm field, resulting in about 0.17 acres, so about a tenth of an acre reduction in right away at that location. The other area that we changed from the original plat, excuse me, let me go back up and now back down, is the area just north of, or W, the new W would hit into 175. You'll see this area up in the upper right corner here. The hatched area is now just a temporary limited easement. They were looking up there. What we did was we had the, if I can get this other drawing back up, eventually. It feels like I'm hitting it. Oh, it's up here. I'm sorry. What we did was at the public information meeting when they did that out, we relooked at the cross sections in there with the engineering firm. Again, what we do with every one of our projects, again, getting comments back from the Wenigers out there with a potential well in that area. What we showed at the display, you'll see in this area was a potential need to purchase land near their southern driveway. I'll get zoomed in here in a second. By doing that, what we looked at doing was instead in that area, so you can see that this area here where it's green, instead of having to do a taking there and purchasing land in that quadrant, sorry, it's way in the right corner. We actually looked at that and put curb and gutter behind there. And by doing that, all we need is a TLE, a temporary limited easement, to make sure the driveway matches in better. We probably don't need that, but we find that more people want us to go back and make a nice transition versus a short, stubby transition. So that area there on the plat 2 was eliminated. So again, the engineering firm looked at that. Myself and staff looked at that going, well, we can reduce the impacts there on that property. There's some trees in that area as well, by eliminating that and just basically only keeping a TLE for the driveway. So there are some changes that were made prior to yesterday to get them into your packet. So you'll see this area here where it's just a temporary limited easement, a hatched area going basically up the driveway versus impacting a larger portion, like I said, the tree, the well that you see right there in that area to basically stay within the right of way for that area. So a couple modifications, I know not major differences, but something I want to make sure we pointed out to you just to make sure you saw them in case you looked at a packet over the weekend.
Any questions for Scott? Go ahead, Doug.
Well, Scott, back to my other question I had earlier about the portion of property that's going to be left along Highway 83 on the, I would say on the outside of that curve.
Yep.
Do you know how big that property is going to be?
Yeah,
That's left private?
Let me get up to it right now. Yeah, so this one is 0.719, so just under 3/4 of an acre. The engineering firm's going to look at the stormwater requirements to see. Again, we originally had not included this upper triangular portion, but they're going to work on those right-of-way impacts. And certainly it's something that maybe we don't need to take that. So there'll be, again, over the next couple of weeks into months, working on that. Like I said, we've got a couple months where we've got to work on the agricultural impact statement. It gives us a little more time to review that. Again, work with the town, work with the landowner up there to see if we need, what we can maybe do differently up in that quadrant.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we're leaving them with a completely useless piece of land.
Absolutely. I have reached out to the landowner and started discussing that a little bit. And we'll have more discussions as we move forward.
Thank you.
What the ultimate answer is, yes, if it's not usable for ag purposes, it's something that the county would then purchase from them.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott?
I just have a comment.
Go ahead, John.
And that's the point I was making too at that intersection. If there's any way we can alleviate that triangle by moving that road up to square it off, that would really be helpful.
I will take a motion to approve. First by Doug. And John
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion passes with 1 nay. Number C, resolution County Trunk Highway S relocation order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As just earlier, there were some modifications to this one too. Again, the engineering firm looked at this area a little tighter and to see what we could do to reduce impact. So you'll see on the north side of IS where they originally thought we'd have to, impact both of these lots on the north side. They've since removed a portion of that temporary limited easement, saving a few trees that are along that area and some bushes to lessen the impact in that location. So they removed that by revising the ditch grades a little bit, but they also added a temporary limited easement for this driveway location up 175. They felt it was a little bit too steep. So again, instead of having them too steep of a driveway, we just go back, get a temporary limited easement from them, grade the driveway back a little bit, make a little better driveway for them versus that. So, we can go a pretty high percentage when it comes down to driveways and steepness of the driveways, but we like to try our best to match in what they have right then, especially at the end, because we'll make it as safe as possible when they're coming to the end. Not to all of a sudden it just dives down. It's very steep. So try to make it as best we can to make it relatively close to level of what they've had before, what they're used to. So you'll see those two modifications that were put into your packet yesterday.
Any questions for Scott?
I have one comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
In looking at several things here that have happened, I know the landowners, the farmers in that area don't want to lose land and don't want to lose farmland. But if you look at just these last few efforts, it's obvious that Scott and his staff are bending over backwards to make things work. So that should be appreciated and acknowledged as well. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
First by Marcy, second by Jeff. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to D, resolution renaming a portion of State Highway 83 to County Trunk W, County Highway W, and another portion of State Highway 83 to County Trunk Highway WS, County Highway WS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You'll see the resolution, but you also see a map inside the packet as well. And if Ashley can bring that up, make her earn her pay today. I appreciate the effort, Ashley. So we're looking at some road name changes up in this stretch of the county. So again, as part of the jurisdictional transfers, you'll see down near the lower left-hand corner, there's a green line that you see down below. So if you recall from those jurisdictional transfers from basically the city limits just north of where Wilson Avenue is up to Clover Road is actually a town road that was turned over to the town of Hartford as part of that jurisdictional transfer agreement. Now the county is going to maintain that. So you will see our county plow trucks out there. You'll see our guys doing shouldering, sign repairs and all that kind of stuff for 10 years out there. So just want to make sure if you see that, we don't do that work for a typical township, but that was part of the agreement that we did that work for them for 10 years. So that road name will become from the town of Hartford. They've got to rename that stretch of roadway because that is their roadway. That kind of does into the whole reliever route thing and can't get to Hartford and all that kind of stuff. So that is their stretch of roadway for their name. So I want to make sure you're clear on that we're looking at the road name from Clover Road, which is the road by the golf course, obviously all the way up to 175. With your previous approvals, we're looking at County Highway W, basically going all that new stretch of roadway, and then naming the short stretch between basically S and where our new alignment goes off the roadway to WS. You'll see in your agenda packet, there's other letters you can choose from that the county doesn't currently utilize. So if you don't like WS, I just chose that because it goes between W and S. No other logic than that. But certainly there's other letters that we currently do not use in the county that you currently use, or you can do a combination of 2 or 3 letters if you so choose. So if you don't like the WS suggestion, certainly it's the committees and boards purview to select a different name that you will going forward. Again, we will be working with the town and landowner to potentially either jurisdictionally transfer that roadway to the town or vacate that roadway with the landowner. So it might be a short-lived county highway. I chose
questions?
WS over SW because if you sometimes get signs stolen. So if you have SW, it might, have like the SW, then they might have another A or G, they steal the signs for getting their dorm rooms and stuff like that to spell out letters, and not too many words go WS. So that's the reason why I just try to make sure the sign doesn't say of like swag or whatever. That's why I chose WS versus SW. So there's some logic behind it.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as written.
All right, I have a motion from Doug, a second by John, John, sorry. Yep. I must be getting old too then. All righty, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes with 1 nay. Moving on, appeal of access permit on County Highway F in the village of Germantown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could have probably done a little better job kind of showing you where this is in the real world. This is down in the village of Germantown, County Highway F, also known as Freistadt Road. If you're familiar, there's railroad tracks about a couple hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet to the west of this development, where Pilgrim Road meets up. So if you're familiar, this is between Highway 145 and County Highway M, down in the village of Germantown. This development came before the Highway Department many years ago. I don't recall how many. It was before my time at the Highway Department in 2015, as a potential development, and then laid in fallow for many years, is now being brought back up by a different developer to go through there. So this has gone through the village of Germantown and several of their approvals going forward. Why you see it here today is because of a couple things that it doesn't meet current county access control policy. The number one policy that doesn't match up is that our policy states one access per parcel. This one obviously is one parcel that kind of surrounds an old farmstead. And they're looking for two accesses to that parcel. You'll see in your packet also a letter of support from the village of Germantown approving the two access points. If you see the entire development, it's rather large and for the lack of better terminology, kind of dead ends for now at the southern end. So that the village was looking for having dual accesses there for fire service, EMS service, police service, and all their other services that they provide. The other aspect that doesn't comply with is the eastern access right now is too close to the village road up to the north. And so those are two conditions that you're asked to waive, if you will, at this meeting, going, okay, we consider that. One thing to keep in the back of your head when we go through this with the village of Germantown is when we're going through the County Highway Y or Goldendale jurisdictional transfer, at the same time, we were discussing County Highway F, but it was a big pill to swallow, right? Transferring one road, then you do two roads, right? So they were a little apprehensive doing multiple roads ways, even with their services, right? Of plow services, all that kind of stuff, and want to get a good feel for how's that project, how that's going to work out. We'd like to start those negotiations up again with the village, and the village has agreed to start those negotiations up. And that's one thing that makes us a little more palatable to the Highway Department, knowing that this could certainly be a village street in the near future, if not future, out there, that it becomes their issue. One thing we still have to work with the developer is this meeting, just to make sure I'm clear on this, is this allows the two access points in roughly the locations that they're at. We still have to do a lot of engineering work and design. They may have started it already. We just haven't seen the detailed plans. We'd certainly to sit down with the developer to kind of go through our thoughts on that, as well as far as turn lanes, bypass lanes, all that kind of stuff out there. For instance, if you have the roadway to the west, if you have a turn lane, bypass turn lanes that you come out and acceleration lane, then you go back down, you back up. It's very hard for our plow drivers. They got to dive over or drop their wing, then bring the wing back up and drop the wing back down. So we like to have a nice uniform, probably stretch of roadway through that stretch so they can drop the wing, go straight, and not have to dive out, dive in, dive out, because that's not safe for our drivers to keep diving in and out of traffic. So that's one thing we'd be looking at. You'll see some other conditions that we listed in the report as well. Of note is that, again, when you get more towards Pilgrim Road, it's more of the dense area of the village as that's concerned. What we don't want in the future is people complaining about lower the speed limit on our road. Get us County, you got to put a pathway to the village.
What is the speed limit along
I believe it's 45. I'm not sure. I think it's 35 when you get closer to the railroad tracks. So, but that's one thing we just make sure we're aware of, that when they put the development in, it's going along a county highway, which is designed to move that. Another reason to turn the road over to the village, that if they decide that they want a lower street speed limit, that's on to them. The other aspect is any trail going to the village, that you've got. I don't remember the number of homes. I think it was 90, 95 homes that might want to get from there to the village, right? The kids might want to walk to their friends or to, there's a custard place in there, all that kind of stuff, right? Maybe to school or back and forth. That right now we don't have the services to get from point A to point B. There's just, there's a paved shoulder there, but nothing more than that. So we just want to make sure that the village is aware that when or if they or the residents come back, it won't be on the county's half to put the sidewalk in or the paved pathway that be on the village. And if they want to work with the developer now or wait till that happens, that's completely on them to decide. But we just want to make sure we go on record with a couple of those items with the village, so they understand our stance on those issues. So with that, we did recommend approval of this, again, with those circumstances of working with the village to hopefully take over County Highway F. Still working with developer on finalized engineering plans. Thing that did work out is site distance is really good out there, right? So from a safety standpoint, it's still safe intersections that are out there. Again, and coming, if they're coming eastbound into development, a lot of them will take that first turnoff versus the second one where there's potential conflict with the other intersection to the north.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion. Or actually, Doug, do you have a question?
Thank you. So Scott, if this is developed and any highway improvements need to be done, the developer is going to be responsible for that cost of improvements. And
they'll have the turn lane bypass lanes on their side. One thing that the previous developer and his engineer had an issue that there's a side road curb and gutter there. They got a small little landing stone wall that's 2 to 3 feet, something like that. And how does that work? And so there's some design work that maybe they started already. Hopefully they look at that before they purchase the property. But yes, they do have some design work involved there that we know that the previous developer was starting to look at. We had their little pre-design meeting with them. But that already was probably 2 or 3 years ago, something like that.
And how soon before you have further discussions on vacating that portion of road to the village?
So we already started the discussions. I met with the village administrator and their public works director. They were taking it back to their attorney and village president. And so it's in discussions right now. He had a vacation and I got busy with other stuff. And we got to circle back on that yet. But as you know, jurisdictional transfers come back to this committee and to board. So you'll get a chance to look at that and review that as it moves forward. So we'd like to move quick on it, like anything else that we do at the county, but prudently with them on that. We'd certainly, if it does move forward, we'd like to have it done before October. So come this winter, they're maintaining the roadway.
So for a few reasons, I do support this. One is the village supports it. There is a jurisdictional transfer, I would say, in the works.
We're hopeful, but it's got to go to our committee board and their committee board, right? So I don't count my chickens before they're hatched.
There's also a development plan presented that helps with my support. The reason I bring this up is Scott is familiar with this, but there's a similar, but not quite the same situation in my district that may come up. And I just want to be consistent with appeals that we approve. So those are the reasons that I would support it. So I will make a motion to approve.
Marcy, you had a question?
So in 2024, we're redoing F? Is that this part of that section?
Yes, so F only runs from 144 to that. So that's part of that, when we talk about jurisdictional transfers, is that obviously usually when we turn the road over, we have a sum of money we pay the local municipality, right? And that's in there that instead of us repaving that roadway, we would hand that over to the village of Germantown, and then they would repave that roadway. That's part of the negotiations, right? Of do they want the money? Do they want us to pave it in 2024, right? Like kind of how why they just said, provide us the funds and then we'll determine when to do it. We kept it in 2024 because of that reason.
Okay.
If you've driven that roadway, it's in really good shape. We think we can get a lot more life out of it by putting some mastic on, another chip seal over top of the road, get at least 10 to 15 more years out of that roadway. And we'll be discussing that with them at that point too, going, we take the money and we do the mastic, you do the chip seal or vice versa, all that negotiation stuff, right? And go back and forth and going, we think you can get many more years out of this particular roadway. Let's do that and take the money and you can use it for other projects and come back and circle back on this at some point.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I already do have a motion to approve. I'll take a second.
I'll second.
Marcy can second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Appeal of access permit on County Highway Q in Waukesha County.
Okay, a little bit of an oddity here. When County Highway Q dips down around Lake 5, it's actually south side of the road, it's obviously in Waukesha County. But since it's our portion of roadway, we maintain that. So we have all the access controls in Washington County, even though when you get further to the west of here, even so, there's actually a property that's on the north side of Highway Q that actually has access to south onto our roadway, even though their parcel is completely in Waukesha County. This one has come before the committee and before the Highway Committee and Highway Department several times in the past that you see kind of, through the report and the notes. So the screenshot I have up on the screen right now shows a common driveway in the east or upper right-hand corner. The parcel is intended to use. Again, we looked at sightlines up there to look at what those potentially would be. So that was a previous map, I believe, and this is going to go down to the next map to kind of show you. You can't see the driveway on here, but the driveway is still in the upper right corner. And so now there's a parcel that's back here, basically the remnant parcel, and the property owner is looking at having a proposed access. There's a little bit of left over here on the left-hand side or west side of that way. Also looked at access with the neighbor. There's a driveway that's there for the neighbor. I think he's got another drawing here, aerial photo that kind of shows that coming up. I'll try to rotate this for you. And so that was not the right direction, by the way. I will get there. So you can see the blue parcel is there. You can see the common driveway is kind of in the middle here by the 01. That's supposed to go back to the parcel, and the blue parcel comes up. That's again where we looked at. So Ted Dumke, our project manager and surveyor, went out there to look at sight lines, and that's when originally where the current old farmstead is in the middle right there with their access. Got the second access years ago, Supervisor Newman, to the right. That would be a common access to utilize. And so they looked at, well, is there a way to get an access on the west side? The unfortunate thing with this one versus last one is the sight lines don't work out. This is a lower speed limit, so sight lines are much less as far as sight distance needed. And unfortunately, that location just doesn't meet sight line requirements. Again, we're looking at reconstructing that roadway in roughly 2028. But with the sight lines that are out there, there's a home or place that actually rents out boats and stuff like that. I believe it's a private residence in that area there. Unfortunately, that blocks the direction one way and don't have good direction the other way. And that's probably why it was on the market for a while, is there's no good location there for a driveway in that stretch of roadway, unfortunately. So he went out there to measure it to see, so about 30 feet short or so of having the right access point when you get there. That was the best he could find out there. I trust his work out there. So unfortunately, this one we said no. The reason the person, we did ask them to put a letter in the report so they could kind of state their reasonings, but I did talk to Ted on it. It's just more challenging for them to get the driveway in under the current location. I will try to view this one back up as well. Rotate view. Right. What? Oh, no, just the landowner is here, but as you know, we usually don't take comments from the public on this. That's why we asked them several times to provide written comments to you, so we can give them in a packet so everybody can see what's out there. But if you look at the far bottom right corner here, you can see it's definitely more challenging. Environmental corridors down there, trees, topography, stuff like that, definitely make it more challenging to access the back part of this parcel. Again, this parcel was divided up. You'll see the original land division was lot 2 and 1, and the one below shows a different lot configuration. But you can see, trying to get back on the right-hand side here, there's a wetland setback of 75 feet minimum that the landowner would have to go through. And again, topography, you can see the existing pond, edge of woods, stuff like that. So there's certainly challenges back there. But like I said, this came back to committee a couple times already, and the unfortunate matter is that the safest location for a driveway is on that shared driveway that was originally proposed by the developer who developed this land. So So that's, like I said, it's come back to the committee a couple times in different access configurations. The farm and building there, they want to do a, like a craft fair, craft areas and stuff like that before. So again, this area's come back many times, and that's our report.
Doug?
So the access we're talking about is for the, I'm looking at the map where that's outlined in blue, correct? And that access is technically shared with, I don't have that in front of me now. Not with the, where the farm homestead is, but the property next to that. Okay. So I do have a question, and I don't know if you know the answer. Was this recently purchased, or was this land?
The person
who
this land, like this purpose, said hand me a letter. If you'd like, I can certainly read that if it's at your purview. I don't know if the answer's in there. I haven't read it yet. But I'm assuming it was recently purchased. It was on the market as in 2019. That was the Google Earth VIM image that we saw. There was a for sale sign on there. But so recently, if that's your question.
So I guess my comment on that would be if the land was purchased under the conditions of the shared driveway, I'd be hesitant to change that. Only because, again, I have the same situation in my district, and I think making changes after the fact are a little setting a precedent, I guess.
And that drawing you're referring to is up there again. It's rotated 90. I apologize for that, but you can see the shared driveway that comes in that parcel, and we can also see the trees there. I know you can't see the change in elevation that's over there, but I believe that's the one of the main reasons.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I agree with Doug. We fall back to let the buyer beware. And I think the rules that were put in place before should still stand. So I would be against allowing a variance. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? You want to make a comment?
I know this isn't our county. Being on a town board, these lots, how they come up with these lots, it's unfortunate for the buyers of these lots because it puts a hardship on them. And so the county did this person a disservice. It is on the plat, like was pointed out, that there are these restrictions, and I agree, we need to stick with that.
Anything else? All right. I'll take a motion.
I would move that we deny the petition.
And we got a second from Doug, a first from Jeff and a second from Doug. Unfortunately, we don't take public comment during these meetings.
I did mention that he did hand this to me, right?
You did mention
Yeah.
it.
So I have it if you want it.
Go ahead and read it, Scott.
My appeal to the Washington County Highway Department, access to County Highway Q, my understandings. 1, a survey map was done several years back outlining the property in question before it was zoned to be the lot it is today. Second survey was done to break the lot up into a front 8.28 acre parcel and even providing a 60-foot parcel strip to connect to the landlocked parcel to County Highway Q. However, the same survey states that the only allowed driveway access is via an easement on the east side of the property. 2, reason for declining the access is due to a minimal site distance not being met. My considerations for appealing the recommendation to deny access. 1, it is widely known fact that County Highway Q has had many issues both with speed and accidents as traffic volume has continued to increase, a factor that has even brought consideration to the need to redesign the road layout. It is actually this reason and the minimum site distance that I find supports, not denies, my desire for the driveway location to be located at the requested spot. Pros for the driveway location to be as requested are: first and biggest reason, creates a visible point of access that drivers on County Highway Q will subconsciously be noticing it, as it is the only driveway in the middle of that area of the road. 2, kids can then approach the road at the same ground level as the road when desiring to cross and utilize the lake access to Lake 5. 3, kids are not walking up from a ditch below onto a road with no shoulders in order to wait and to look both ways for crossing, creating an ability for drivers to also have a sight line that is higher to pedestrians than approaching from a ditch. 4, a driveway that there creates awareness to both vehicle and pedestrian intersection, which would otherwise go unnoticed until too late. 5, kids will not have to walk a few hundred yards from the actual currently permitted driveway easement to the east side of the property along County Highway Q, a road already deemed very busy with no shoulder or guardrails to the south to provide protection or level sightline from driver to kids. 6, consolidates a crossing to Lake 5 that is only from one direction on the road. B, additional reasons for this location. 1, the driveway easement to the east approved for access runs directly into the terrain of kettles as it works its way back to the field. These kettle areas are, as deemed by Waukesha County and listed on the survey map, are unbuildable areas as land is not to be reshaped. To build a driveway along the side and into these kettles would require restructuring portions of the kettle in order to build up the land to be supportive of a driveway that would not erode. 2, locating the driveway on the west side of the property requires no such restructuring as stated by the excavator, just removal of topsoil replaced with some supporting bedrock. Layout of the land would not require any movement or altered landscaping. 3, the sightline with the least visibility is towards a corner that is near a 90-degree turn, meaning excessive speeds taken are minimal and reduced by the sharpness of the curve, meaning risks involved with the westward direction are more of the driver not making the curve than not seeing a driveway 300 feet plus feet farther away. C, cons for having a driveway access allowed in the proposed area. Busyness of County Highway Q and high traffic volume. 2, sightline desired requirements of 330 feet in both directions from access point is short by 30 feet or less, depending on exact location chosen. And 3, this creates another access point along a busy road. Proposal 1, approve access for the driveway as requested. 2, location of driveway is fluid and will be placed at the longest visible sightline area to achieve as close to 330 feet or above distance in both directions, or as further proposed by the Washington County Highway Department. 3, access will be made to be level or slightly graded above the road for determined amount of distance away from County Highway Q, so as to further increase visibility to both pedestrians and vehicles from any direction, both on County Highway Q and the driveway. Excavator will be required to meet those standards as laid out at the cost of the landowner, as well as address any other land grading policies per normal guidelines. 4, any trees on the south side of County Highway Q on the property of the access point in question be removed to clear back the road and further increase visibility of the driveway access point. That's the end.
Any comments on the appeal letter? Go ahead, Doug.
So I just have a comment to maybe help the property owner understand that, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the lot, when it was divided, even though it's not in our county, I'm sure it's standard procedures. The access, I wouldn't say the access, but the way the property comes down to County Line Road was not done that way for access. It was done that way because of frontage on a county road. There's each lot, assuming each lot has to have a certain amount of,
I wouldn't want to venture to guess what the towns and counties codes are down there. And a lot of towns in our county are different. I just wouldn't want to say that that's why they did it. My guess is because they want to have lake frontage for the parcel. So if you're familiar with this, if you see there's a blue little area on the north side of the roadway, right, that lake access.
yes,
There is a guardrail in that location. One of the reasons why the neighbor came to us earlier was there's a guardrail there. They wanted us to have an opening in the guardrail. Well, you just can't put an opening in the guardrail because if people come through and they get that opening in the guardrail, it's not safe. So same thing here, that we asked like we did that person, you got to go around the end of the guardrail versus coming over because there isn't much of a shoulder there between the guardrail and the roadway on the other side. That person at that time, not this landowner, but one from the farmhouse, was concerned that they would come back over the guardrail and trip and fall in the roadway and get killed. We said, yes, that's not a good thing. We need to go around the guardrail. Unfortunately, it's very steep on the other side. We do need the guardrail right there. So we ask that if they do come out, if you use the neighbor's driveway and access where they can actually get around the guardrail versus trying to walk over the top of the guardrail there. We're not really interested. If you're familiar with guardrail too, they got the new called ET2000Ns. It's a big block on the end, right? You got so much room behind that, along that guardrail, to actually be effective, right? It's got to crush out and stuff like that. So you just can't put a lot of openings there. And it's got speed limits and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we'll look at. I'm sure when we do Highway Q in 2028, we'll get a lot of comments about creating opening there so I can get my lake access. And so that we'll be looking at that at that time, but not this time.
I know we can't speak on their regulations on frontage, but the lots are done like this to stop from creating landlocked parcels. And the access agreement was made with the shared driveway when it was divided. So that's why I wouldn't support the appeal.
Yes, if I had to guess, they did the 60 foot of frontage for lake access versus other access.
Correct.
Otherwise, they would have gotten access there. Yeah.
I guess you understand what I was
Yeah.
trying to get at.
Okay, so we're gonna take another motion. Jeff had to leave the meeting. Okay. Okay. So a motion to approve or deny? Okay, a motion to deny. And a second by Doug. All those in favor of denying signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. All right, our next meeting date is Wednesday, May 26, 2021 at 7:30 a.m. We are hereby adjourned.
Thank you.